So recently I came into a little problem. I want to be able to check the S&P 500 price of the index, and when it drops below a certain threshold value, I want to buy more stock of it so it can eventually regain itself and go up, right? But this can be quite tedious as you'd have to be checking it all the time and making sure that that threshold value that you decide what you wanted is met and all of that. And after a while, that can become pretty tedious. A pretty good project that I had in mind was that I want to go ahead and automatically check what the price is, and if it falls below that certain threshold value, then I want to go ahead and send myself a text message saying that, so then I can go and buy some more stock of it. So I'm going to walk you through this process of creating this project and everything that has to come with it, and we're also going to deploy it to the server so it'll be up 24/7. So first what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make my Python environment for this project. So to do this, I'm going to do p, and this p is just a variable that I have set to Python 3.8. So I'm going to do p-m. I'm going to do venv, and where do I want this at? I want this in my Python environmental directory. I'm going to call it market watch. Okay, so let's go ahead and activate that now. Python environment, market watch, then activate. Alright, let's make sure we're on Python 3.8. Okay, we're good. Now I want to install a few packages here. We're only going to need 3. I'm going to first need Beautiful Soup, and that'll be 4. And this is just going to be for scraping the data. And then I'm going to be using LXML as my HTML parser, and we're going to need requests to actually get the page. Oh, and I forgot to do pip install. Alright, now that we got those, I'm going to navigate to a directory here, my Python directory, and I'm going to clone this repository I have. So I'm going to do a git clone, get the link right there going. Alright, I'm going to navigate into that directory, and I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. Alright, cool. So right now we just have a README here, as you can see. And what I actually want to do now is create a new Python file here. I'm going to call this app.py. And I'm going to activate my environment that I just created there of Market Watch. So Market Watch, there we go. And now that we have that, we can go ahead and start coding. So I'm going to go ahead and also create another Python file here. I'm going to call this secrets. Okay, so in this file I'm going to contain some of my application secrets, such as like my email and my phone number and my password and all that stuff. And I'm going to actually create another file here called secrets.example.py, and we want to do a get ignore, and in this get ignore I'm going to ignore the secrets.py. Okay, so in this example here, what we're going to do is have a variable called secret, and it's going to be a dictionary. And so the first thing we're going to want is the email, and I'm going to set that to my email at domain.com. My password is going to be my password, and this 2 is going to be the number we're going to be sending to. So say zeros and then at domain.com, and this will be our example.py here, and is our get repository updating here? Let's go to there we go. All right. I don't know why it's not working within this, but we'll keep going. Okay, now I'm going to actually input my correct information here into the secrets file here. So I'll be back whenever this is done. Okay, I went ahead and put in my information in the secrets.py file, but I wanted to further explain something to you guys. So this email here, I'm going to be using the Gmail email server to send my emails, which we can actually transform into text. My password is just the password to your email account, your Gmail account, and so is your email, the password to your Gmail account. And this two is your phone number, including the area code, and then at, and this domain.com is actually how text messages are sent through various companies. For example, we have Verizon. They are at vtext.com. AT&T is at txt.att.net. Sprint is at messaging.sprintpcs.com. And T-Mobile is at tmomail.net. And there are other services as well, so you just might have to look them up, but these are pretty much the top four. So those are those. Now coming back into app.py, I'm going to go ahead and check this in real quick. So I'm going to say secrets established. All right. Okay, so now in app.py, we're going to import logging because we're going to want to log any errors that we might have to a file. I'm going to import the OS module for locating our current directory we're in. I'm going to import the regular expression library. And I'm going to import smtplib. Okay, now I'm going to import our modules that we downloaded through pip install. So I'm going to import, or I'm going to say from bs4, import beautiful soup. And we're going to import requests. And we also want to import our secrets that we used here. So I'm going to say from secrets, import secrets. All right, cool. So first thing I'm going to want to do is get our path to our current directory here. So I'm going to say path equals os.path.dirname. And what do we want the directory name of? We want the directory name of the path of this current file. And let's just make sure that we got this right. So let's print our path. And we get right to our path, which is our base folder. All right, cool. So we have our path. Set up our logging now. So I'm going to set logging.basicconfig, and our file name is going to be to this directory here. So path, and we'll call it error.log. Okay, file mode, we want to do it in append mode so we don't lose anything ever. And our format for each line, we're going to want to set this to, I'm going to set this in brackets here for our time and then our message. So this is our message. And here is our time. So our time is going to be ASCII value time, obviously. And we can set this ASCII time, ASCII time. And our date format can be Let's say we want the year dash the month dash the day and space, and then we want the hour, percent capital H, get a colon in there, percent M for the minute, and percent S for the second, and that should be good there. Let's run this and make sure it works good. Okay, so we are giving one. Okay, here we have to say file name. Alright, cool, and we get our error.log that came up here. Alright, so now I'm going to show you this on Google here. So let's go over to the finance here. I'm going to be working with the S&P 500 index. So when we come over here, as you can see, this is on Google, and to access this, we have to actually send a header to Google. If we don't send a appropriate header to Google, it actually won't render the JavaScript, and this page can actually not be scraped. So we need to make sure that our header is actually, looks real. So to do this, I'm going to set a variable here called headers. It's going to be a dictionary, and we're going to put our user agent as this fake user agent. I will provide it in the description. It's a mimic of someone that's using Chrome on a Mac. And for our URL that we're going to want to scrape from, we're going to want to scrape from that Google URL here. And all we really need is this part right here. We don't need this extra stuff on the end. This is just for this auto updating stuff. So let's add in our URL. Let's go ahead and do a request to that URL. So we do request.get URL, and we're going to send our headers as the headers we gave. And from this, I'm going to make some soup out of that beautiful soup that we got. And I'm going to pass in that request as the text. So beautiful soup can process the HTML. And our features, features, is going to be LXML is our parser. And if we print here our soup, and let's prettify it so we can see it better. Our beautify? Is it beautify or prettify? I think it's prettify. And if we run this, as you can see, we get all of our HTML here and JavaScript that Google wants to load for us. Nice. Alright, so it looks like it's scraping that from Google. Oops, and 6 of that. Alright, cool. So we got our soup. And what we want to do here, this is where the regular expression comes into play. That's where we imported this free module. So here what we want to do is we want to find whatever this price is right here. So if we inspect element here on this and we go up to where this is actually showing, as you can see, our class right here is this W1 RRW and then this other class, then we get FW-price up. So if I copy this and go into here and I put this in a comment, so that's our class we want to search for. But if I go back here to Google Finance and let's say I find the Dow Jones, and this is going down instead of up like our S&P 500 currently is. So now if we look at this and we copy this class and we compare it to our class that we just put here, as you can see it's the same up to this is price up, whereas this is price down. Now for my application, I actually want to only look for price down. However, I'm going to just look at the price every time, and then if it is in fact down, then I will actually go ahead and send a text message. So now that we know what our class is, now we can go ahead and get rid of that, and we'll leave that for now so we have a reference to it. So now with this soup, I'm going to find the element of this class. And if we take a look back at this, this is a span. So when I come in here and I set a variable called data equal to soup.find, and what do we find? We find a span, and we want the class of whatever this is right here, right? And if I print what data is and we run this, as you can see, we get that element here, and I can do it easier by doing data.text. And as you can see, we get our 2.2 and 0.68. So let me put this to the side here and put Google to the side. And let's go back to the S&P 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and close this and run this again. And we get 2.25 and 0.69. Now, it's a little bit off from this because what we're actually seeing displayed on our screen on Google's website is actually a little bit lagged because they don't constantly update it over and over again, as in like every millisecond. However, as soon as we scrape this price, it's actually scraping whatever the price is when we load that page. So if we stay on the page on Google, it won't refresh as fast as if we were to keep hitting refresh over and over again. And this is just scraping this web page, so it's basically like hitting the refresh button. So if I were to refresh this and run this at the same time, we used to get them pretty close, 2.16 and 0.67. So there you go. Okay, now I want to make sure that we can actually get this right, because what if this was actually priced down? So let's say we wanted to look for price down, right? And we ran this. Well, now we're going to get an error. None type has no attribute text, because when we print data, oops, and I put that stuff in there. If we run what data is, we actually get none because it hasn't. This is not priced down; it's priced up, right? So we need something to make sure. So we need something here that will make it to. It doesn't matter if it's priced down or priced up. And normally you might be able to think that, oh, maybe you want a star because anything else after these two class names is what would be valid. But when we run this, as you can see, we still get none because this is actually interpreting that the class name would have an asterisk inside of it. So we actually need to use a regular expression to use this asterisk here. So to do this, we can recompile this string using read.compile. And when we compile this, now when we run this, as you can see, we get our text. And it doesn't matter if it's price up or price down. Okay, so now I'm going to implement my logging here. So I want to make sure that if something happens here, for some reason we aren't able to scrape the price, maybe Google's down or something, we want to be able to log that error and see what happens. So first what I'm going to go ahead and do is do our if name equals main. So if this file is the one that's actually run, then we'll execute stuff. And we want to put this inside of a try block, put all of this stuff in the try block. Okay, so we scrape that web page. We put it in some soup. We find out what the text is of that thing. And we print out our text. So, as you can see, we have our plus 0.19 and 0.58. So first off, I'm going to say that, let's say something happened to this data here to where it was actually still none. So if it's actually none, I'm going to say if not data, then I want to raise an exception of, let's say, value error. So now that we raise a value error, we can accept the value error. And we can log this as a exception. And we'll say data return none. And if any other case were to happen, let's just log all exceptions as E. And let's print or let's log that exception, and we'll just say exception was thrown. Okay, so, and then down here we'll again print our data.text. So if we run this now, as you can see, and let's pull up our error.log here. So we run this, we get our normal data here. Now let's say that we didn't have this compile on here, so our data would actually be none, right? Because it doesn't find anything like this, so none would raise this value error. And we log right here, data return none, and this was a value error and it tells us what line and whatnot. But let's say we had something wrong with our actual scraping, so let's give a URL that perhaps doesn't exist, like ASDF, and we run this, we get another error down here, and this error is data return none. However, we have a invalid URL. Okay, so now that we have the logging out of the way, I'm going to delete our log so we can be able to see easier. Change this back to our URL and get rid of this line and uncomment this line again. And if we run this, we should be good to go. Alright, good to go. Alright, so now that we have this, we need to be able to see if this is a plus or minus, right? So to do this, we can actually split this, because it's a string, split, and let's split it on the space, and we run this. Now we get a list, and our first index is this, and our second index is this. So let's go ahead and grab that first value in the list. So now we get plus 3.11, and if we just wanted to grab that plus, we can index that again. And when we run this, as you can see, we get our plus. Now with this scrape, there's actually a problem that we come into when actually scraping native stocks, because it's actually a Unicode minus rather than like the actual minus sign. So if I were to go back over to finance and let's find the Dow Jones again, and let's just grab this link here, and it goes to here. So I'm going to send my URL to this real quick. Oops. And if we run this, as you can see, we get minus. However, if we were to say this equals to, and then this is just our minus key on our keyboard, and we run this, it's actually false. That's because what this is actually equal to is a Unicode character that looks like that, and it's U2212. So now, as you can see, we get true. So when we actually send our message, we actually cannot send this Unicode value. We actually have to send it as a normal string. So when we get this text here and it's a minus sign, what we need to do is actually replace this first value in the split string. We need to replace that with a normal minus sign on our keyboard. And to do this, we can actually use the replace method on our string. So to do this, I'm actually going to set data equal to our data, but I'm going to replace that Unicode, which was \U2212, and I'm going to replace that with the normal minus sign on our keyboard. And now this is our new data, and we actually want to set the text of it to that. Data equals data.text, and this will just be data. Okay, so now that we've replaced this Unicode symbol with a normal minus sign, if the sign is actually minus, so I'm going to say if, and we want to get what this is equal to and we want to set it see if it's equal to that Unicode value, which is /u 2212. And if it is, then we want to go ahead and set our data back to our data.text, except we're going to replace that Unicode with a normal minus sign, and then we're going to send text with the data. Alright, so from this we see if the first sign is minus. If it is, we change it to a normal minus sign, and then we send the text. The next thing we need to do is actually check for if our data is actually within that certain threshold value. So again, if we come up here and first we need to comment this out because we haven't created that function yet, but if we print out data.text, and as you can see we get negative 49.12, and I'm actually going to check this percentage right here. So I want to see if it drops below 2%, and this percentage from Google is actually not negative, it's always positive. So what we need to do here is then we need to split it again. However, this time we need 1, so we run this, we get that percentage sign, and now we can index this point right here. So if we do this, and I actually want to make sure that this won't break in case, let's say, it goes to 100 or 200 or more percentage. So let me go back to finance here, and I want to go ahead and look at something that may go up a lot. And I wonder if there is any. So let me actually look it up right now. And okay, so let's just use SYPR. So let's go ahead and search it up. SYPR, and this is up, as you can see, 113% right now. So let me get this URL here. I think it's just after this TVM thing right here. And let me just, for right now, change this to a plus. So if it's equal to a plus, and that. Okay, we got a value error because data was none. Let me control click to open this up. Okay, so our URL is wrong. If I do the whole thing. Okay, I guess I can take the whole thing then. So let's just put in the whole link here, and yes, it's pretty long, but this is for testing purposes. Okay, we got no output because we did not print our data. Let's print our data right here real quick. Okay, so we have 118%. So now what we want to do is see if we can index this very value right here, because it's always going to be the value right next to the percentage sign. So to do this, we can split it, and we're actually going to split it first on space. Then I want to grab the second index here, so that's index 1, Then when I grab index 1, I want to split again, and I'm going to split based on the dot. And then I want to take the first half, and I want to take the last element in it. So when we run this, we get that 7, which is right what we wanted. And again, if I go ahead and uncomment our real URL that we're going to use, and if we run this again, and let me change this back to our Unicode, and run this. Okay, we got an element to our data here. We're not getting any errors either. So let's go ahead and try to debug this now. Okay, so we get in there. We don't get in here. So let's go ahead and see what data.split this is. It's a plus sign right now. Oh, I guess the index is now positive. Yep, we're positive, so that's why. So let's go back here and say if we're positive right now. Let me go ahead and make a copy of this so we can change it easier. Just uncommenting the line next time. Okay, now we can get rid of these print statements for debugging purposes. And now when we run this, we get our 0. Alright, cool. And the 0 is actually a string, so I actually want to cast it to an integer. So let's change this to an int. And when we run this, we get our 0 still. However, what I want to do now is say if the value is more than the threshold. So I'm going to set the threshold value up here. And we're going to set it to 2. So now I'm going to say down here, if, and then we want our value that we have right here. So if this is greater than or equal to the threshold, then we'll actually send the text. And instead of setting this data value right here, I'm actually going to pass this in normally, right there, and then we'll send the text. But for right now, I'll just print what this is so we can see it. And I'll get rid of these two. If we run this, we get nothing. It's because it's not greater than or equal to 2. But if we were to put 0 here, of course, then we get it. There we go. But I'm going to set this back to our threshold value here. Alright, cool. So now let's actually send our text message. And we'll leave that there for now in case we want to switch it to a minus sign. Alright, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to create this function here. And it's called send text. And takes in some data. Alright, so what we need to do here is configure our mail server to where we log in and then we actually send our text. So to do this, we can set our email equal to, and we're going to use our secrets here. Secrets, and we want our email field. We're going to set our password to secrets and our password. And the server we're actually going to be using is the Gmail server, so smtp.gmail.com. And our port we're going to run it on is 587 for TLS. Alright, so now what we want to do is go ahead and try, because we want to make sure that we get everything going here. And I'm going to accept all exceptions so we can log it. And if we get an exception, I'm going to just logging dot exception, and we're going to say exception was thrown. In sending text. All right. So first let's declare what our server is. Our server is going to be the Gmail server that we created. And we're going to be running on that port 587. And then we're going to start our TLS server. And then we're going to log in with those credentials we gave it. Okay, once we've logged in, now we need to set our SMS gateway. And this is going to be that domain to which has our phone number and then our specific carrier. So again, we can just use our secrets that we created. And that was our variable 2. And body is going to be our actual message. So what we want our message to be is I'm going to say S&P 500 dropped. And I'm going to set a new line, and then we're going to give it our data. That's passed in. Once we have all our variables declared, we can go ahead and send the mail. With our email, our gateway, and our message. And once we've done all that, we can then close the server. Close our connection. And that's all there is for sending the text through the Gmail server. So what I'm going to do now is actually set this back to our threshold value to 0. So let's go ahead and check what the price is right now. Price is 2.15, 0.66. Let's run our script. Okay, so it's sending the message right now, and as we can see on our phone, takes a second, and we get our message. So 2.17 and 0.67, which is the values very close. And we check our error log. We get one error, which is the data return none, but this was a while ago. So that's all there is to it. And the next part we're going to go into is actually setting this up to run on a server. Okay, now let's make our git commits here. So I'm going to refresh here. All right, our error log. We don't need to check in our error log either, so let's add that to our get ignore. Save that, come back here and refresh this, and don't need our temp either. All right, go ahead and commit these, and we'll say completed. I'm going to push the repository back to GitHub. Okay, so let's head on over to our server now, and I'm going to navigate to that directory that we have in here. So /d/python/marketwatch. And now what we can do is actually print our directory here. However, I'm going to actually get the directory of where the Python environment is. So I set my Python environments, and we go on MarketWatch bin, and it's Python. So I'm gonna give this. Okay, now what we want to do is create a cron job. So to do this, we can type cron tab -e. This is to edit. And let me first copy this path. Alright, come down to the bottom. So to do this every minute, we're going to do 5 *. And now we want to do our command. So remember to run a Python file, we'll do Python and then the name of the script, app.py. So first, to get Python, we need the actual environment in which we're going to run this, because those have the correct modules that we installed. So that's right there, that link that we copied, and then /python. And then the name of our script, for me, it's located in /mnt/d/python/marketwatch. /app.py. And now when we save this, every minute, so at the 0th second of every minute, is going to run this. So if we pull up here the index and we pull up the time, and I'm going to record on my phone as well. So in approximately 5 seconds after I'm done talking, it's going to send an email. So the cron job should have just executed, and within any moment it should send the text. And there it is. So guys, that's all there is really to it. And I can run this forever, and for every minute it'll do that request. However, I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to edit my cron job, and what I'm actually going to do is set it to every hour. So at every minute that is 0, it is going to run the job, and obviously for a minute to be 0 it has to loop around back 1 hour. So now every hour it will go ahead and actually run the script.